Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rat Hole interviews. This is a irregularly scheduled set of videos where I interview people in the tabletop role-playing game industry. My name is Brent Jans, also known as Dorklord Canada on Twitter and Renaissance Gamer on my own site. With me today is someone who needs no introduction.
Do I get one anyway?
Yeah, you definitely get one anyway.
Okay.
Kat McDonald is the creator of one of my favorite solo RPGs, The Headless Guide. And also the brilliant mind behind Heroic Chord and the chief person in charge at Peach Garden Games. Hi, Kat.
Hi.
I should also mention that Kat is also my friend.
Hi.
Not least of their accomplishments.
It's one I'm proud of nonetheless.
Indeed. Indeed. How are you today?
Oh, I'm happy as a clam. I'm just, doing my best. It's Sunday and I'm doing my darndest. How are you?
I am also doing my best. I think that is the ongoing mantra for the last 2 years of this panini. Is we're just doing our best.
We're doing our gosh darndest out here.
God.
But speaking of people doing their best.
Indeed.
Speaking of people getting by in the panini.
Yes, we're here to talk about we're here to talk about a few things today because I wanted to talk about Solo but Not Alone 2.
Yes.
And I also wanted to talk about Scream to Heaven.
Roar to Heaven.
Roar to Heaven. I knew it was more impressive than a scream. Because while that had a successful Kickstarter run, I think it's still itch funding, isn't it?
I mean, I haven't I think the sale is over, so the bar is not showing, but you can still buy the itch fund package and the money will still get to me and the crew. So yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So why don't we start with Roar to Heaven?
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll work our way to Solo but Not Alone. So tell us a little bit about that project.
So ever since the Lumen SRD became a thing, I love Lumen. Lumen is a delight. And I used it to make an extremely transparent anime fan game. Because a lot of my games are extremely transparent fan games, and I just felt like making Symphogear, and I wanted to play Symphogear. And ever since I wrote Blazing Hymn, which is my love letter to Symphogear and Evangelion, it's kind of like a magical girl mech existential musical nightmare. I have daydreamed about doing a podcast for it. I've wanted to for ages. I love podcasting. And finally I was like, I can't keep asking Kathleen to work for free, but I can raise money to give her. So we did a casting call. We gathered up some of the best minds in AP podcasting as far as I'm concerned. And we are going to be bringing you a high octane anime style 13 episode season of, high drama if my cast is to be believed. I'm excited. It's going to be a delight.
And there's no reason to doubt them at this point.
Oh, not at all. Did you know that I accidentally cast nothing but Forever GMs?
I did not know that. That is excellent.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that some Forever GMs actually get to play.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Not only do they get to play, but because players are in charge of scenes, they still get to flex their directorial muscles that they learned from being Forever GMs while still being players in this podcast. I'm so excited for you all to see what these people are capable of, because without exception, they're magnificent.
I would love to go back and trace the origin of GM-less games, because I have to believe that at the heart of GM-less games, like the first GM-less game ever created, was probably created for GM. But that's great, because it not only creates a game where they don't have to GM, but they actually get to keep using all the stuff they've done.
Oh yeah,
That they use when they run the game. So,
we
no, that
should write
sounds
more
fantastic.
of those.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So when does the season launch?
We plan on hitting the mics in February.
Okay.
I would like to build us a good lead time because I like the security blanket of a heavy lead time. But we're going to be launching earlier for Kickstarter and itch backers than we are for everybody. Although we are launching for everybody. You did not need to get in on the Kickstarter to listen to this podcast. But we're looking at hopefully launching in March.
Nice.
So that's the timeline we're hoping on. If things get in the way, they get in the way. This is podcasting after all. Heaven knows that'll happen. But definitely early 2022.
Nice. Speaking of the Forever GMs that you managed to get in the game, who is playing?
We have got Erin Cerise of Super Idols fame. Also, my co-producer. Could not have done this project without her. The go-to, as far as I'm concerned, from Magical Girl anime and Magical Girl and music-inspired podcasts. This is going to be a very much darker take than Super Idols RPG. Erin's absolutely up to the challenge. Wonderful. We have Kendrick from Tales Yet Told. You are going to love them. They are sparkling and effervescent and hilarious and can turn on a dime to high drama in an instant. Genuinely a delight. Also excellent to listen to on Tales Yet Told. We have my lore master Dylan from Edge of the World. Dylan is all about high drama. They refer to themselves in their GM role as the misery manufacturer. That's the kind of GM they are. They just live for putting people through the emotional ringer. And as a player, don't believe that they're going to be any different. They show a real intense mastery, both in role play and in combat, which is part of why they wound up getting cast. And we have got Jordan, who is going to be in the upcoming Avatar: The Last Airbender Pro Bending series.
Okay.
That I don't believe is launched yet. But Jordan is brilliant. Subtle intelligence, like understanding of massively tiny details in every scene. Just like, I don't believe I've ever thrown anything that was beneath Jordan's notice as a player. You're going to love them. They're tremendously sensitive and thoughtful and nuanced as a player. And they bring a ton to the table.
That sounds excellent.
I love my cast.
Well, full disclosure, I was one of the backers of
Yay!
Heaven. So
thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. So I'm looking forward to watching all of this, and I guess as a backer I get to see it a little earlier than other folks, so I will try not to spoil it, while at the same time shouting its praises all over the place.
If you backed at a level that gets presents, I'm probably going to be putting them in the mail in the next couple weeks too.
Okay. I think I did.
Yeah.
I replied to a survey, so.
Yeah, I only send those out to people who get presents, so.
Oh, well, there you go. And I also got the presents from your other game. Actually,
yay, I'm so glad.
Right here. I came here to... The reflective stickers are not working. Too shiny.
They're very shiny. Yay!
Yeah. So actually, while I'm talking about that, why don't you tell people a little bit about I Came Here to Win?
I Came Here to Win is, funnily enough, the one GM-less game I've written. And it's also the first game that I co-wrote with the cast of Sword of Symphonies. We were up late doing what we do, which is watching Forged in Fire. We love watching reality TV about knives. It's just a thing we do as a cast.
Mhm.
And we got really fixated on the idea of designing a game where you could play Forged in Fire. And what we came up with was this GM-less reality TV game that I usually describe as a party game because it's very pick up and play. Everything gets kind of established around the table as you go, and everyone takes turns being the producer. So
Nice.
it's an improv party game about telling the story of a season of reality TV from premiere to finale.
Excellent.
It's every time I've played it, it's gone wildly off the rails. It's so chaotic.
I'm someone who has famously said that I'm not a huge fan of reality TV shows, but then I get sucked into things like Forged in Fire,
Yeah.
or what was it was a fantasy based reality show. I think it was just called the Quest.
Oh, wow, that sounds like fun.
That was everything I wanted to be, and it only had one season, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
it was everything I would have wanted in, like, an ongoing series of shows. I think it's an unjust universe that the Quest only got one season, and we still have stuff like Survivor. But anyway,
and I Came Here to Win is more closely meant to mirror shows like Forged in Fire or like Project Runway or Top Chef, which are like competition-based reality shows, which are the ones I tend to watch the most. You could definitely tell a Big Brother because there are challenges in Big Brother, but it's definitely meant like every episode has a challenge role.
Right.
You might have did you ever see Face Off?
I did see Face Off.
Oh, Face Off was good.
Yeah, I actually watched a lot of Face Off. Not least of which because I enjoyed the makeup art aspect of it, but also the way they were editing the show was different from a lot of other competition reality shows because they were editing away from the drama as much as possible. There was a lot of focus on how the competitors were actually sort of like working together and giving each other advice and trying to make the best stuff possible.
The
Which I
vibe was
really enjoyed.
really the vibe was really focused on artists doing art
Yeah.
and like the incredible things that movie makeup technicians are capable of.
Yeah.
And less about people in a house being jerks to each other, which I agree entirely. I used to watch Face Off with my mom because she also doesn't like the high drama, but was absolutely here to watch people make these incredible monsters.
Yeah, and I think for a while they tried to do a prop making one as well that didn't work out as well as Face Off, which was sad because I thought that fit alongside it pretty well.
Yeah.
No, it was a lot of fun, and a lot more interesting to watch than something like I do enjoy cooking competition shows, but even something like a Hell's Kitchen is usually about like a third about the cooking and 2/3 about everybody being snarky assholes to one another. And it's like, well, can someone just clip the cooking bits and all?
That's part of why I always kind of preferred Top Chef because, well, Top Chef, especially in later seasons, was very much a high drama reality TV show. They at least stuck to the script in terms of this is about people making excellent food.
Right.
But Inkmaster is kind of the worst of both worlds in that regard. I like every time I watch Inkmaster, I want to shrivel up and die because not only is it very high drama, it's also just like such high stakes. And someone's doing a tattoo in an hour and it looks so messed up because of the time crunch. I can't handle it. I cannot handle Inkmaster, and I really want to because I have a bunch of tattoos and am kind of a tattoo aficionado, but Inkmaster kills me every time.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like timed competition is something you want to have on a tattoo show.
Right? Not when
Like,
you're personally altering a person's body.
right, like the person getting the tattoo is like, what was their deal? Like, okay, so
Right?
you're gonna get your tattoo for free. Oh, awesome. But the tattoo artist has to do it in like an hour. So it may not turn out the way you want it.
Cool.
But it'll
So
still be
cool.
but it'll still be permanently on your body. It's like, oh, great.
Horrible.
Yeah.
That also reminds
Um,
me, the one non-competition reality TV show I liked was
oh,
one about a studio that does cover-ups. Like
oh,
a
okay.
tattoo studio that does cover-ups. And sometimes people would come in and they're like, look, I have this really unfortunate tattoo from my messed up Nazi youth. Please fix it. Or
Mhm.
like, I got a tattoo of a baby one time and it's horrifying looking. Can you please? And that's, I think, the one reality show that wasn't a competition that I got really into for a while. I forgot what it
Nice.
was called.
Yeah, it doesn't sound familiar. I
No.
got into one that was non-competition for a while too, that was all about, I forget the name of the auction house, but they did um,
Mm.
all the high-end, like, sci-fi and fantasy movie auction, like,
Ooh.
memorabilia and stuff like that. And so every episode was about them sort of putting together a different auction and trying to find, like, the best pieces
Oh,
and
wow.
that sort of stuff. And then, of course, it ends with the auction, and they sort of talk about like what sold, and like what prices they got and stuff like that. But it was, and sometimes they would talk about like memorabilia restoration, which was something I was interested in because
Mm.
I collect old tabletop role playing game books, which were not meant
Oh.
which were not meant to be collected, and so they oftentimes aren't in the greatest condition and need to be restored. So, um,
Plus, plus, you've also got that stage manager background that would probably really just light up, I imagine, at a show about people collecting props to
it's
put
true.
into a scene. Like,
It's
that
true.
sounds right up your alley.
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun to watch. And the people involved were generally like they weren't focused on like any negative personalities or anything like that. There wasn't any like this guy's an asshole, but he gets the best props, so we keep him around.
Oh, no.
It was all just about them like being like a really good group of people who were working together and doing their best for folks. So
Nice.
yeah.
Absolutely
Um
nice.
all right. Well, we've strayed a little bit of far afield.
A little
Let's
bit.
but hey, it's just a friendly conversation, so that's okay.
Yeah. You can
Uh,
use I Came Here to Win to play Face Off.
yeah.
There, I brought it back a little bit.
I wonder how would we do like a tabletop role playing game reality TV show?
Mm.
Because I mean, there's several angles to attack that from. Like, do it from like the design perspective, so you get a group of people together to design tabletop games and then eliminate them
Yeah.
over the course. It could be players. Yeah.
Yeah, like teams doing an AP one shot.
Yeah. And then the
I would
audience votes on who did the best.
I would like that because I think that if you were to do that in a really granular fashion, teams would have like a GM, they'd have players, and obviously these people would need the skills to exceed at those roles, but you'd also need a production team.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love a show that would actually bring to light just how much production is involved in the AP space.
Right?
Because
Oh.
it's so invisible to so many people.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, because
like,
all they see is what the camera's pointing at, and very
right.
rarely does the production staff point the camera back at themselves. I
Even
think.
in audio, Sword of Symphonies lives and dies on Kathleen's back. Like
Mm-hmm.
our editor slash sound designer is a
Yeah.
wizard.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great podcasts that are doing that sort of stuff. 12-Sided Stories is another one that does really great audio editing for their
Yeah.
podcasts, and they do a lot of stuff around Call of Cthulhu and some very very creepy games. So the audio is really important as far as that goes.
Yeah.
It really sets the mood.
And
Yeah.
it's frustrating because AP is one thing I love about the actual play space is how accessible it is.
Mm-hmm.
You can gather your friends, pick up webcams, stream a game on Twitch, piece of cake.
Yep.
But there's so much between the people who are just picking it up like that, just that easily, and the people who are big names in the space that no one ever talks about. Like, no one talks about the difference between you and your friends picking up a game and Critical Role, who
Right.
are like professional actors with a whole production team behind them.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to me how invisible all of that infrastructure is, because I think it leads a lot of people to have these really unfair expectations of themselves, when
Right.
the fact that they're getting on mic or on camera and having fun with their friends is, to me, the most important and beautiful part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it leads a lot of people to, they try and shoot with like their computer cameras or phone cameras, and they don't understand why their stuff doesn't look as good as. And it's like, well, it's because they've got like, 9 professional grade cameras pointed at various points of the set, and I mean, unless you're willing to drop, 10, 20, $50,000 on equipment, you just are not going to match something like a Critical Role for appearance or audio or but you can still have. I liken it to, so again, you mentioned like I have a stage management background, so like a lot of my stuff is in theater. I liken the like Critical Role and Rivals of Waterdeep and in Motherlands and shows like that is sort of the Broadway, off Broadway level of AP. And then most of the other stuff that's out there, I liken to community theater.
Yeah.
And you can, and that's not that's not denigrating anyone. I'm not putting anyone down when I call like a lot of APs community theater, because there is a lot of outstanding community theater out there. But it is definitely a different level, from something like a Critical Role or Rivals of Waterdeep. So,
and there's so much more to productions than their production value. There's so much more than production value behind both theater and AP. As there's like even shows that don't have high production values still bring a lot to the table. They bring their perspectives and their stories, and like I'm part of the Be Gay Roll Dice Network, which is a podcast network dedicated to queer-led AP podcasts. I've learned so much about the space since joining this network. I've met so many wonderful people. And like there are some shows like Sort of Symphonies, which are very dedicated to production values because we happen to have a professional sound engineer on board. And there are shows that are less persnickety about these things and are just there to tell their stories regardless of who's listening. And that's also extremely beautiful. And I kind of liken Critical Role to an actress in a Hollywood movie playing an ugly character. Like the movie pretends that this is something very humble and that this person is not wearing makeup, but there is still there's a makeup team, there's a lighting team, like everyone involved is working hard to make this look as humble and easy as the actor does.
Yes. I mean, that's that is an entire separate conversation we could have about how Critical Role needs to stop pretending that they are just a group of friends, and actually start acting like a business that like looks after their business. Anyway,
it is a whole. There's a lot of worms in that can, Brad.
Yep.
Look at all these worms in here.
Yep. And if we open that can, we may not get them all back in. So,
yeah.
All right. So, speaking of Um, I honestly don't know how to do a like really smooth segue between talking about actual play games to talking about solo games. So let's just
Mm.
dive into. So one of the things you have going on that we mentioned at the top is Solo but Not Alone 2, which of course
Yes,
implies that there was a Solo but Not Alone 1.
it
So
was.
can you tell me a little bit about how that came to be and sort of what inspired it and what it's all about?
Yes. So, my demon niece, my sister's eldest, who is from hell. She's my angel. She's the center of my world. She's completely perfect in my eyes. For her 4th birthday, she spent most of the day making cards for me. And she was 4. The most she could do was put a scribble on the page and put some stickers on it. But the scribble was always green because she knows green is my favorite color. And she put stickers of things I like. And I thought I was so moved by the fact that this 4-year-old spent her birthday doing something nice for me. I
Mhm.
was like, I can't be outdone by a 4-year-old. I can't lose to a 4-year-old. So as my own birthday started approaching, I was like, how can I spend this day helping other people? And the more I saw things going around Twitter about people struggling with their mental health around the holidays, because my birthday is early in January,
Mhm.
or in the winter, I thought, you know what? Mental health initiatives are important to me because I struggle with my mental health as well. This is a good time for mental health initiatives because people need to see proof that someone cares. So let's put together a charity bundle. Let's launch it on my birthday, like Scarlet would, and let's see what we can do. And I asked what charities would be a good fit. Someone brought up Jasper's Game Day, and they were incredible to work with. They are incredible to work with this year as well. And I put out a tweet that just said, "Hey, solo game designers, who's in?" And the answer was staggering. Like a load of solo RPGs, tons of them. Um,
Yeah.
I put it all together on Twitter, which I will never do again because that was a massive pain. I used Discord this year, which was so much easier.
Good.
But last year we raised $31,650.24 for suicide prevention. And Jasper's Game Day got
Outstanding.
back to me and they told me that that money went toward establishing mental health curricula in schools and establishing mental health education in elementary and high schools so that young people develop a vocabulary around mental illness and a fluency with mental illness issues to help reduce stigma and hopefully help them recognize if maybe they need help. And I was floored by this. I was so excited that the money that we raised went toward something that's legitimately going to save people's lives. I just love it. So of course I
That
did it again. I had a great time.
that's outstanding. Yeah, I mean and you're already at just under 50% of your goal,
Oh,
I
we're at
believe.
49%. We're at 49%. We're so close.
All
We're
right,
so,
people,
so close.
get over there,
Yeah.
get your donations in, get it to
There are
50%.
101 solo games in this bundle by 74 creators.
Yeah.
It is $10.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of solo games. And here's the trick. Here's the little smoke and mirrors that made this bundle so easy for me and Jasper's. Is just like last year, I put together a spreadsheet that includes every game in the bundle, its genre, the equipment you need to play it, any content warnings, and a summary. And that spreadsheet is in the bundle. Jasper's created an itch account and uploaded the spreadsheet so that I could just turn the slider to 100% to Jasper's and forget about it. I don't touch any of this money. Itch sends it all directly to the charity. It's so
Excellent.
easy. But that also means that when you get this bundle, there's a guide in there that'll help you find the game that's perfect for you. Like, there are some dark games in here. And if you're in a place where a dark game might send you spiraling, don't worry. Content warnings are in the spreadsheet so you know what you may or may not be ready for. If you're the kind of depressed person who likes a dark story, calling myself out here, then that's okay. You can make that decision for yourself.
Yeah, I have to say, like prior to the pandemic, I hadn't really played a lot of solo games apart
Same.
from like the choose your own adventure books, and apart from the odd like solo adventure you might find in like a gaming magazine or something like that, where it's like it's D&D, but they've put together this essentially choose your own adventure with dice, that you just work your way through the adventure and come out the other side. But I hadn't actually like encountered a lot of solo RPGs where the point was that you played it by yourself from the get-go. And then over the course of the pandemic, they've become one of my favorite things to do. And largely for mental health reasons, because, you know, I do miss being able to sit down and game with people on a fairly regular basis. I hadn't realized how much of my gaming life was board gaming until the pandemic hit and we couldn't really play board games anymore. Obviously that's changed. There are now virtual tabletops for that sort of thing, but
yeah. Those early months were just us scrambling.
Oh yeah. No, and this is fantastic because I think, you know, it fits perfectly with Jasper's about mental health and about, you know, suicide awareness and that sort of thing. And the name is beautiful. Solo but not alone is just
yeah. I fell in love with solo RPGs when the bundle for racial justice and equality, I bought that. And I was like, I want to show all the designers who contributed to this how much I value the fact that they contributed to this. But I can't convince my friends to play all these games with me. There's a million. So I found a spreadsheet that someone had made listing all the solo games. And I was like, this I can do. I can play all the single player games in the bundle for racial justice and equality. And I did. I played them and I reviewed them. And that was when I fell in love with the genre, because they're all so different. They're different experiences. Some of them are very crunchy and gamey. Some of them are ephemeral and meditative. Like you can really find any kind of experience you're going for. And it's really great not having to convince your friends to play it with you. You don't have to sell anyone else on a solo game. You just have to like sell yourself. Love that.
Yeah, and it's really great to give to people who are, you know, maybe not able to get a group and maybe don't realize that solo games are a thing. So if you've already gotten it for yourself, everyone, you know, listen for that friend in your life who is like, I wish I could game more, and buy a bundle for them. They will appreciate it. And 101 games, they will not run through that very quickly. So
and there's there's so many, and they're all so different. Like if you're a person who really likes choose your own adventure, like fairy tale type things, Beneath the Wishing Tree by Ziva is just it's written like a fairy tale. It's like you stepped into a fairy tale choose your own adventure book that you play with a tarot deck about getting your wish granted. If you're into very crunchy games, there's Courage by Cat Scratcher Studio, which is an attempt to capture the gameplay loop of Zelda in a Carta game. So that's very much an adventure game. If like there's a lot of Carta games in here because I messaged everyone who was involved in the Carta Jam to see if they were interested, and they're beautiful people, and they were. But there's meditations like master of the genre Jian Shim is in here with pin feathers. Just one of the absolute pillars of solo gaming. I was absolutely delighted to include pin feathers. Let's see, 100,000 Places by Maria Misson, which is a ritual and meditation. And then you've got like GM tools like My Own Sacred Forge, which is about making a magic sword, or Kurt Potts's Sigils in the Dark, which is about making a grimoire.
I have to admit, most of the time I lean towards those type of games, like the mapping games and the creation games and things like that.
Yeah.
I think they're a wonderful way for so much of the discourse in GMing circles is around like how much work do you put into prepping for games, and for a little while there it was all about the hard slog of like doing all of this work to create stuff for games, and part of the reaction to that was, well, you shouldn't do all this creation, you should enlist your players to help. And that is all very true, but I do actually enjoy creating these things. And if I have a game that I can play that lets me like play a game and relax and enjoy myself while simultaneously creating something that I could throw into a campaign later on, I am 100% down for that. So like mapping games like Delve, where it's like where you create an underground dwarven empire, and not always successfully, but and being able to create magical swords and books, and so good.
Then you would probably enjoy My Sacred Forge then. I guess my big recommendation for you then is, have you ever played The Land and the People?
No, I haven't.
It is a card game about being a cartographer and traveling the land and learning its stories and learning about the land while you make a map.
Excellent.
So I think that although it's not explicitly a GM tool, I think that it would be a really good one. And it's one of it's one of my favorite card games.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing too, is that, I mean, when I say that they're useful GM tools, I don't mean to imply that the people who created them that way.
No.
They definitely created them as standalone games. But I love the fact that they are multifaceted in that way. And I found that, like, because of a lot of their similarities to things like Microscope or For the Queen and things like that, it is, even though they're solo games on the tin, it is possible to, if you wanted to like bring one or two other people in to sort of help tell the story along with you, that's possible as well, which I think is a lot of fun. So they have a lot of utility that that I think a lot of people overlook.
Yeah, I think when a lot of people discuss GM prep, to me the simple answer is, if it feels like homework, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the kind of GM who does not love to do prep. I love to do world building when I'm making games, but I don't really like to do GM prep. So I do a lot of improv, and that's fine because the GM is a player too. But if you like just knuckling down and designing a city, party hard. Absolutely party hard.
Yeah.
But I think I really like this movement that is saying, well, maybe none of the players should be doing homework. Maybe we should be playing game and enjoying game, which is, to me, ideal.
I think that's the best direction for us to be moving in. But I absolutely agree with you. If for some GMs, the prep is, they really enjoyed like just sitting down and going, okay, this is their starting village, and these are all the people in the village, and these are all the buildings, and this is their history, and and they love doing that. I'm one of those GMs. I love sitting down and just creating a location and going, okay, what is everything about this location? And but I've also come to accept in my own soul that not every player is going to find out all that information in every campaign, and that's okay. it means that I can reuse it in another campaign and and
Yes.
have new players discover new things about it. So,
Okay, I have another rec for you.
okay,
It's Schisms and Sacrilege by Michael Elliott,
I love it
which is
already.
it's a solo game in which you design a religion. That's like
Perfect.
explicitly part solo game, part GM tool. And that's not something I've seen before. I remember looking at it and just being like, oh dang. Because I put a lot of thought into designing religions when I'm writing a game or creating a fantasy world back when I used to write fiction seriously. And religion was always something I put a lot of work into, and I never thought of having a solo game to generate a religion before. That's mind-blowing to me. It's beautiful.
That does sound like a lot of fun. I will have to
Yeah.
check that out for sure.
Let's see. If we have a viewer who really likes Monster Rancher, I wrote a game that is based on the gameplay loop of Monster Rancher. It is called Raising Hell. It is about raising a little baby devil to be the very best they can be. Let's see. We've got really sentimental, introspective games by Ralph Mayenberger of Buddha RPG, which is The Moment You Were Born, which is a card game about kind of exploring your existence in the world, which is very much his style. And My Postcard to Andre, which is about like writing to a friend who's fallen out of your life.
Oh, lovely.
But we've also got like what is in here? Whispers in the Walls, which is a solo horror journaling game. We have got a rare solo game from Gila RPGs in Time to Kill, which I actually did an AP of, which is about being an assassin and spending those last few moments before the target shows up. Like when I say there's all kinds of games in this bundle, like there's anything you could name, really.
Yeah, and I think that's important that, like, people understand that there is so much breadth and depth in the solo RPG genre.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think of solo RPGs and they either think of the choose your own adventure, or they think of it's, a very introspective journaling game. And it's like, yes, those are there for sure, but there are just so, like, if there's something you're interested in, chances are somebody has done a solo RPG about it.
And there are some surprisingly crunchy ones too, which I think was what kind of took me aback, was Mapping the Catacombs, which was in the bundle for Racial Justice and Equality. So a lot of the listeners will probably own Mapping the Catacombs. And it's a straight up OSR dungeon delve for one.
Yeah.
It's delicious. Like, I love Mapping the Catacombs. I'm not even a big OSR person, but just like the fact that they made this solo experience out of this very traditional pillar of TTRPG history is just luscious. Love it.
Yeah. And I have to admit, like, I enjoy discovering these games now because I remember back when I was a kid, it wasn't always possible. I mean, for those who are tuning in and don't know, both Kat and I live in Alberta, Canada, where it is often cold and snowy for throughout the winter. And I actually grew up about Edmonton is the furthest south in Canada I've ever lived. I actually grew up like 500 kilometers north of where I am now.
Oh, dang.
And so there were some times during the winter where you just couldn't leave the house. You couldn't get together to play with other people. Unless you wanted to, like, brave the hike outside in like minus 50 centigrade weather. So I do remember as a kid, like, I would just crack open one of the D&D modules that I had, and I would just make a character and start playing through it, and I would GM myself through these modules. And I mean, I may have fudged some dice rolls.
That's fine though.
That may have happened. I blame that on being like 13 years old, and
Yeah.
but yeah, I would just spend time in my room playing through this stuff and amassing all of this treasure and having a good
Nice.
time. So I'm glad now that there are still those games being made, but that there are also like other more introspective or more sort of horror based stuff that's happening.
I love a good solo horror game.
Oh, so good.
Chris Bissett's The Wretched completely revolutionized the solo game space.
I have done, yeah, and Chris Bissett is one of my favorite creators out there right now. Another one of his games is Under the Floorboards, which is
yes.
which I absolutely love playing. But I have played through so many sessions of The Wretched, and I'm waiting for one. I've wanted to take the time to actually record and post one of those games, because that is sort of the purpose of it, is that you are sending out these, like, you're making these log entries in your ship's computer. So it would be lovely to do like just an actual play
yes.
version of that.
And there's I played a lot of Wretched and Alone games because there's so many in the bundle for racial justice and equality. And that was kind of what inspired me to write Carta, was just like seeing that Wretched and Alone had created a community full of people who would donate their work to the bundle for racial justice and equality. Was like, oh, you're actually like, you're building something in the TTRPG community when you write an SRD. And you're gathering these wonderful people like The Wretched did. And also, Chris Bissett is my inspiration, because if you see the tweets that come out of @PanGalactic on Twitter when it is promo time, I wish I had that power. I wish I was able to just completely scream my promo tweets at Twitter. And I tried to mimic that power for Roar to Heaven. I don't think I got there. Like an absolute inspiration, genuinely.
Yeah, I love reading Chris's tweets, and I treasure the moments like the rare moments that we've had a chance to like chat a little bit, because he's just just an all around good.
Yeah, just real cool. I remember when I tweeted about The Wretched and how printing it just decimated my printer. And so he sent me a physical copy.
Oh, that's so nice of him.
I know. I was so touched. I adore The Wretched. I adore The Sealed Library.
Yes.
By someone who is not Chris Bissett, Matt Sanders. They're two different people.
It is very true.
But The Sealed Library is gorgeous. There's one in the bundle for racial justice and equality called Echoes, which is a transparent Silent Hill 2 fan game, which I am all about. Absolutely all about it. Nice. And we do have a Wretched and Alone game in Solo But Not Alone. We have got Go Alone by Chris Bissett, the master himself.
Yep.
And it is about being a legendary sword caught up in a cycle of violence.
I love it.
It is another Zelda game. There's so many Zelda inspired games in here. So now, do we have okay, we don't. So yeah, we have Courage, we have Go Alone. So if you're a Zelda fan, there's some very transparent fan games for you.
Excellent.
There's Lay on Hands, which is a dexterity TTRPG, which is actually just like physically let's see. I still have not actually cracked it open, but it is just legendary and I can't wait to.
I will have to check that out. Yeah, I picked up the bundle but haven't had a chance to delve into any of the games yet, but I'm looking forward to it. So you've given me a lot of places to start.
I only included games that I wrote this year. So games that I wrote last year. So you're not going to find Headless Guide in there. You can find it on my itch, though.
It's true.
I'm very glad that you like Headless Guide. My mom does too.
I mean, I you know, apart from anything else, apart from it being like just a really fun game, I also, I don't see a lot of stuff inspired by Canadian things out there. So
Yeah.
so I always like games that have sort of a Canadian background to them that I can recommend to people. I'm actually in the process now of, maybe I shouldn't talk about it because I've only just started, but I got inspired by, again, part of my theater background. I have done a lot of Canadian play production, and one of the plays that I have worked on 3 times in my production history, once as an actor and twice as backstage crew, is The Black Bonspiel of Willie McCrimmon, which was a play written by W.O. Mitchell, a Canadian author, which is basically about Willie McCrimmon making a deal with the devil, that in order to be allowed to win the Dominion Cup, which is essentially the Briar for anyone who knows anything about curling. The entire play is about curling. The first act is all in Willie's shop, and then the second act is an actual curling game that happens on stage.
Wow.
And I can attest, as both an actor and a theater person, that is a pain in the butt to stage every time we've done it. But I'm working on
but I still want to see it.
Yeah, I'm working on a tabletop game that allows you to curl against the devil.
Yes. So, that's extremely wonderful.
Myself and like 10 other Canadians will probably enjoy it, and that's about it, but I don't care, because I'm going to have fun with it.
It's very Canadian, and I'm all for it, because I wrote Headless Guide for the Folklore Jam, and one of the rules is you have to use your own folklore.
Yeah.
And that's to prevent people from being appropriative, but also it has the added effect on getting people to really consider where they come from. And I have this book from the 50s, maybe earlier, called Blue Nose Magic, about the traditions and legends of Nova Scotia, where I was born. And that's where Headless Guide came from. And so I was just doing it was my first ever solo game. And the more I read Blue Nose Magic, the more I saw these stories about pirate gold. And I was like, well, that's the story I want to tell. And I think that a lot of appropriation would be avoided if people were willing to look at kind of their own culture and history, not as the default, which is how a lot of white people are raised to view their culture, but as one of the world's many cultures, no more or less important than any other. And just like, no, there's folklore of my people. I'm from Nova Scotia. My family's lived in Nova Scotia for generations. But one of the unfortunate, and I know, what about the white? But like, one of the unfortunate things is that our culture becomes invisible to us because we view it as the default. And that's kind of a shame.
Yeah.
And I would love to play a curling TTRPG because, like many Canadians, I love curling. Listen, listeners, not all of you are Canadian. I can see the ones who are Canadian who are nodding.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
We forgive you.
But curling has an almost hypnotic effect on most Canadians. If you put curling on in a bar, the place will fall silent as we are just entranced by it. It's very soothing the way the rocks move on the ice. Yep. It's gentle, it's relaxing, it's hypnotic. It's Canadian hypnosis. And like, some of us are very into it, like my good friend Brent, who plays when he has the chance, if I remember right.
I do. Yeah. When I can.
But some of us are into it and actually play and compete, and some of us just stare at it on TV, obsessed. But
Yeah,
It's
I
got a
mean,
weird effect on us.
growing up, it was the only team sport I played for quite some time. I played it through high school and into college, and we were playing at the provincial level for a little while, and then
Nice.
the team just sort of fell apart. But which
happens.
sometimes happens. It's sort of like being in a band. If you can
Mm-hmm.
keep everybody sort of working together and pushing in the same direction, it works out well. As soon as that stops happening, yeah, it's done.
Yeah. Just
Um,
the way the rock slides, the way
yeah,
the people shouting echoes around the rink. It's
the
just
sound
nice.
of, I mean, the sound of the brooms, which changed over the course of me, because they stopped letting people use corn brooms, the actual sweeping brooms, and everybody transferred over to using like the brush style, which has its own unique, like very quiet but very like constant sound, and but I have to admit, I do miss like the booming slap of like the guys who could get like the corn brooms sleeping or sweeping really well.
Yeah.
I wish in the entirety, because I mean, Japan went out of their way to create an Olympic curling team, and they actually brought over Canadian coaches and things like that to help
Yes,
them
I remember that
bring this.
story.
I am saddened that there has not been a curling anime yet, because they've done anime for like pretty much every other sport that Japan is wild about, like, you know, volleyball, baseball, obviously, cycling. I'm just like, come on, just give me one season of a curling
Please.
anime. Like,
They did a hockey anime that I haven't seen yet, Pride of Orange.
Yep.
And my friend looked up the reviews and is like, "Oh, it looks like it has the vibes of an Idol anime." And I'm like, "Sorry, what?" So I must watch it now. I absolutely have
Yeah.
to, because anyone who knows me knows that my media diet is mostly aikatsu. And if there's any conflict beyond will we do a good job at the concert, I'm not interested. I
Yeah.
live on a steady media diet of cotton candy. It's very my brand.
Yep.
It's okay. You need to tell me everything about this game when you have things about this game to tell me everything about,
Yes,
because I'm
absolutely.
stoked. Is it going to be a team game or a solo game?
It's going to be a team game.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Obviously for 4 players, because
Yeah.
there's 4 people in a curling team.
Yep.
But yeah, and then of course your opponent is the devil. So
So is there a GM
the
playing the devil, or is it GM-less?
I'm trying as hard as possible to make it GM-less,
Okay.
just for the challenge of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there may be not necessarily a GM, but one of the players may have to take on like a facilitator role, just to like do just to play out what the Devil's team is doing at any given point.
Yeah.
But I may switch that role around so that like it isn't just one person, like each turn a different player takes on that aspect, and so we can share the load out a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That sounds
I'm
like fun.
I'm trying to decide whether or not there's going to be sort of multiple curlers that the devil can call up. In the play, he basically pulls like 3 different historical souls out of hell to curl for his team. But I thought it might be fun to have like, you know, for each game, the devil gets to decide which which players to pull out of hell. So it can be different every time. So if you want to play it multiple times, you're always curling against a different team. But
I
we'll
like
see.
that. Yeah, that's nice. That's
Yep. It's
It's
incredibly niche.
oh yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
but that, I
fine.
mean, I think that's part of the reason that I sort of gravitated towards it as the first game for me to make, is that it is incredibly niche, and so like I don't have to. Some of the pressure is off as far as like whether people are going to like it or not.
Yeah.
But
And not only that, I think the beautiful thing about indie RPG design is that when people are free of a corporate structure telling them to appeal to everybody, they're free to make games that speak to who they are. And
mhm.
regardless of whether or not that speaks to other people, regardless of whether or not other people resonate with it, a lot of indie RPG designers are screaming their own selves into what they're creating, and that's an energy that you don't find in corporate TTRPGs.
Yeah,
So, like, yes, a game that is about playing curling against the devil is a very Brent project, and that's what indie TTRPGs is about. And if
yeah,
10 people play and enjoy it, that's because 10 people are on that wavelength with you. And
yeah.
that's I think why the feedback on my games is so meaningful to me is because as a TTRPG designer, I'm always just doing my own thing. I always just got to do me. And
Yeah.
so when somebody responds to like when somebody responds to Headless Guide, it's like, well, this is me doing me. This is me exploring my heritage in my own way, and these are people who are with me on that journey. And that's really wonderful.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that about the indie tabletop community, is that it is a lot of people doing stuff that is very, very special to them.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that somebody at Paizo or Wizards of the Coast isn't putting something of themselves into their work, but it's just the nature of a corporate structure, or a group project of that size, that um, very little of you is going to make it to the final product,
Yeah.
compared to something that you did on your own.
Or like
So,
community indie games. I'm thinking Sina Una,
mhm.
where like a community comes together and is like, let's put what makes our community special into this game.
Yep,
Beautiful.
or Unbreakable.
Unbreakable.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so
That's,
yeah, a lot of those great projects out there where it's you know people telling their own stories, and finally getting a chance to tell their own stories, as opposed to having their stories co-opted by quote unquote well researched white people.
yes.
Um,
One of my very favorite things about the Carta Jam, which was one of the best choices I ever made, was writing an SRD and hosting a jam.
mm,
Absolutely where it's at. I love doing it. But so many people made their first games in the Carta Jam.
that's excellent.
So many people stepped up and were like, well, this is me. And it was beautiful. It was like some games are similar to one another, but that just meant that there were two designers with similar vibes.
Yep.
And I hope they became friends because it seems like they would. And
Yeah.
like giving people the courage to put themselves out there like that was something that was not explicitly part of my purpose when writing Carta, but I'm over the moon that that's how it turned out.
Hmm.
It's the best part of writing games. Like one time I wrote a game that was just a transparent Monster Hunter fan game. It was just about playing Monster Hunter.
Hmm.
Apex Predator is just Monster Hunter for
Yeah.
one, and that's fine. like not all of my games are just like deep looks into my soul. Some of them are Monster Hunter, but that's
Well, and
okay too.
it's one of the things that I love about Itch, is that the preponderance of game jams, um, which I have to admit I'm guilty of signing up for game jams, and then not completing anything. But mostly I sign up so that I can like stay in touch with what's going on, and because I like reading the games and writing about them and stuff like that as well.
Yes.
Um, but just that. Um, giving people almost the permission to just, like, let's put out something that isn't perfect, that isn't like a finished, polished, you know, game that is going to rock the industry. Let's just, put out this thing that I've had sitting in the back of my mind for like the last month, 2 months, year, or whatever, and finally put it on paper and just get it out in front of people and see what they think.
Yeah.
I love the jams for that. And as you say, like all of the new creators that come in and go, yeah, okay, this jam sort of speaks to me. I'm finally gonna get something down on paper.
Oh yeah. It's this. I have a jam coming up.
Ooh,
Starts on Valentine's.
do tell.
It is the Artisan Game Jam. The theme is DIY. Basically, make a game, do as much of the process yourself as you can.
Okay.
So like for me, because I study calligraphy in my spare time, I'm going to try to hand letter it, maybe even make a font.
Ooh.
Not sure. But like for some people, that's going to be handwriting, hand illustrating a game. For some people, it's going to be doing their own layout for the first time. That's fine. The point is just to like learn more about desktop publishing, learn more about putting your game together, and put together a game that only you can make is the theme. So
excellent.
Yeah, we've got the twin rules are respect your capabilities and expand your horizons. So like, I do not want anybody who is disabled and who can't write for hours without pain to look at the jam and say, not for me. Like, do what you can within your capabilities. Try something new.
Perfect.
So
I love that.
I can't wait to see what people hand in, because it's going to look different from person to person. And there's going to be entries in there from people who've never illustrated their own games before. Like,
yeah,
that's all I want.
That's outstanding. I look forward to that.
I do too. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no clue. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. And another thing that's coming up that I would like very much to talk about.
Yes.
Pride 2022. I am part of the committee that is putting together a podcast festival for queer-led actual play podcasts. We are the Rainbow Roll Fest. And our goal is to help people find new favorites in a space that is vibrant and beautiful and full of amazing work. So we are going to be taking 2 days. It is the 19th and 18th of June, 2022. And right now, as you and I are speaking, volunteer submissions are still open.
Okay.
So you can find that at Rainbow Roll Fest on Twitter if that's something you'd like to be involved with. And soon we're going to be putting up applications for shows. So if you're watching this and you're behind the helm of an actual play show, and you or your castmates are queer people in the space, we would love to show you off. We would love to hopefully help find you some new fans. We're also going to be raising money for mermaids and help them in their mission to protect and nurture trans youth, which is obviously something that's very important to us as a community.
Absolutely, it is. That's outstanding.
I love podcasts. There's a reason all my actual play podcasts are playing my own games, because I can't decide whether I like game design or podcasting more.
Well, and these days especially, they sort of go hand in hand. Like, I think a lot of people underestimate how much an actual play can be like a valuable way of getting your game out in front of people.
Yeah.
And letting them see like that it's not as, because I think one of the barriers that comes up all the time, and I think it's not necessarily a real barrier, is that people who come from a D&D background, they're, assume that all other games are as complicated or as involved to get into as Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
And that is simply not the case. And so if you can actually show through an actual play that, like, here's the game and this is how simple it is to play it, And this is how fun and enjoyable it is to play it. You're miles ahead of someone who may not be able to get an actual play together for their game.
Yeah. And also, one thing I found is vice versa. I've had people who've come to Heroic Chord from Sword of Symphonies because they've enjoyed the stories that they know that Heroic Chord can tell, and they want to play the game themselves.
Yeah.
But I've also had people come to Sword of Symphonies from Heroic Chord looking for basically an example of play.
Yeah.
And so like that's a mutual feedback. Like they feed into each other. And I've heard people come from both directions, and it's really wonderful to be able to say, well, if you're having trouble with the manual, first of all, oops, sorry, my bad. I wrote it. I'll try and write it more clearly. I promise. That hardly ever happens, actually. But here's the podcast. You can listen to us play it.
Yeah.
Look, I have a great editor on board. Don't worry. Next edition's going to be gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean, I hear he's a bit of a jerk, but he does good work, so he keeps getting jobs.
I've literally never heard a person call him a jerk in my entire life. That's not a thing. That's absolutely not a thing. But
dear listeners, the editor. Full disclosure, dear listeners, the editor is me.
Yeah,
I'm editing the current version of Heroic Chord, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm so glad. It's a game that's very dear to my heart because when I studied Canadian literature, as anyone who studied literature had to do in college in Canada, it's a required course. One thing that was brought up was the very Canadian focus on scenery. That Canadian fiction tends to really think about the area and the environment and the scene, because I wish I knew. I think because so many Canadian stories are stories about surviving on the prairies or what have you, that it's just kind of become a part of our culture. And so despite not taking place anywhere near Canada, because Heroic Chord is a game that's very much about the scene and about the world and about how you interact with the world, it is still a very Canadian game. Sorry, I tricked you.
No, and it's it's an excellent game that way. But you're right. I mean, like all of Canadian literature, there is definitely like a scenic element to all of it. Even stuff that's happening in like cities where, it's still, I think our cities are distinct enough, our large cities are distinct enough from each other that, they sort of become environments of their own. But
I always describe our city as being beautiful in an art house movie kind of way. Like beautiful in a way that makes you a little uncomfortable, maybe makes you think a bit. If you like chain link fences and rail yards, Edmonton is the place for you.
Yeah.
I love it here, but I fully acknowledge that there are people who do not love Edmonton, and they're not wrong.
It is true.
It's not an easy city to love.
Also very true.
I love it, but wasn't easy.
All right. Well, I think unless you have another project that you want to talk about, I think we have reached our time.
Oh, party hard.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Kat, for coming around and chatting with me today.
Oh, I had a wonderful time. I'm glad.
Yeah. I'm hoping to keep these up throughout the rest of the year. We sort of started these interviews a little bit last year, and Dave likes them. Nice. and I enjoy doing them. So I'm going to make it my business to talk to as many people in the indie TTP
Oh yeah.
In the indie TTRPG space as possible.
The space is full of people who are wonderful to talk to.
Oh yeah. I'm not going to hurt for I'm not going to hurt for people to talk to. That
I
is for
don't
sure.
imagine.
Where can people find you on the internet if they want to track down your stuff?
Well, people can find me on Twitter at Catlinggun. That's CATLINGGUN. You can find my games on the website peachgardengames.com. That's also where you can find my podcasts. You can listen to me on Sword of Symphonies, the upcoming Roar to Heaven, or on Edge of the World. And you can find my games on itch at peachgardengames.itch.io. But if you're going to itch, please search Solo But Not Alone 2. It's going to be live until March.
Excellent. Thank you again so much for being with us today. And
my pleasure.
Yeah. And thank you all so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, please shoot us a message or leave some comments for us over at The Rat Hole, or follow us on Twitter at TheRatHole Presents. I think that could be wrong, but if you search The Rat Hole anywhere, you'll probably come up with our Twitter feed. I have been Brent, and you can find me at Dorklord Canada on Twitter.
It's at TheRatHole.ca.
There you
is
go.
The Twitter handle.
Well, there you go.
Sorry.
A highly skilled interviewer would have looked up that information prior to the interview.
No, don't worry about it. A skilled interviewee wouldn't have looked it up during the interview.
But I appreciate it because I would rather people get the rights. So yes, at TheRatHole.ca. Yeah. I hope to see you. Well, I probably won't see any of you at the next one because this is not a two-way medium. But I hope that you will come back for the next interview at The Rat Hole. Take care, everyone.
Bye.